Have you ever wondered why life sometimes feels unfair, why even when you work hard and make good choices, challenges still find their way to your door while others who seem careless continue to succeed? This question has lived in the minds of countless people across generations, and perhaps it has lived in yours too. Tonight, you will not travel across oceans or chase distant horizons. Instead, you will begin a different kind of journey, one that leads deep into the heart of ancient wisdom that has guided people for thousands of years. The truth is simple but powerful. Nothing in your life is random. Every experience, even the painful ones, carries a purpose waiting to be understood. What if the setbacks you faced were not punishments but stepping stones? What if the struggles you endured were shaping you in ways you could not yet see? The hook is this: everything happens for a reason, not because fate has written an unchangeable story, but because life unfolds through causes and conditions that are both natural and universal. As you settle into this moment, breathing more slowly, letting the tension of the day soften, allow yourself to imagine that every choice you have made and every event you have experienced has been part of a larger pattern. That pattern may not be visible yet, but it is real. Tonight we will explore how Buddhist wisdom reveals this pattern and shows us how to walk with it instead of fighting against it. This is not just knowledge to memorize, but an experience to live. If you stay with this story, you may find that the very struggles that once confused you can become the teachers that guide you toward peace. You have just opened the door to a perspective that can completely change how you see your life. The promise is that nothing is random and nothing is wasted. But before we can understand why everything happens for a reason, we must explore the foundational truths that make this possible. These truths are not abstract theories floating far away from ordinary life. They are lived realities discovered again and again whenever we pause, observe, and notice the patterns of our own existence. The first of these truths is impermanence. At first, the word may sound heavy or even unsettling. Impermanence means that everything changes. Nothing stays exactly the same. Think about the river you may have crossed on a summer hike, or the stream that winds through a countryside meadow. You could return the next day, the next month, or the next year, and you would never touch the same water twice. It is always flowing, always moving, always transforming. This is not just poetry. It is physics, biology, and human experience. The cells in your body are constantly renewing. Your thoughts shift moment by moment. Your emotions rise and fall like waves. When we resist this truth, when we cling to something as if it will last forever, suffering grows. We imagine that relationships, careers, youth, or comfort can be frozen in time, yet reality always reminds us otherwise. This reminder often feels cruel, but it is simply the nature of life. To deny impermanence is to fight against the way the world is built. To accept impermanence is to step into harmony with reality, to recognize that change is not only inevitable, but also essential. Without impermanence, there would be no growth, no healing, no possibility of renewal. From this first truth flows the second, karma. Many people hear this word and think of it as a mystical form of punishment or reward, a kind of cosmic scoreboard that tallies good deeds and bad ones. But karma in its original meaning is far more subtle and far more powerful. Karma is the natural law of cause and effect. Every action, every word, every thought plants a seed that ripples outward into the world. Some seeds sprout quickly, others take years or even lifetimes to bear fruit, but nothing disappears without leaving its trace. Imagine tossing a pebble into a still pond. Circles of ripples expand outward until they touch the edges of the water. That pebble does not vanish in silence. It creates movement, and that movement connects with everything else in the pond. Our choices are like that pebble. Every moment we are tossing stones into the water of existence, shaping not only our own experience, but also the experiences of those around us. This law is not fate. It does not mean everything is predetermined and unchangeable. If karma was simply destiny, life would be a prison without hope. But the truth is more liberating. Unlike the pebble that has no choice in where it falls, you have the freedom to choose your actions. That freedom is your power. You may not control the ripples of the past, but you can always choose what stone you place in the water next. Think of your own life for a moment. Consider a decision you once made that seemed small at the time but changed your path in ways you never expected. Perhaps it was a conversation that opened a door to a new friendship, or a job application that altered your career, or even a moment of kindness to a stranger that returned to you years later in unexpected ways. These moments reveal the nature of karma. Choices are not isolated. They are threads woven into the fabric of existence, creating patterns we cannot always see until later. This leads us to the third principle: choice. Impermanence means that everything is constantly shifting. Karma means that every action creates consequences. Choice is the bridge between the two. You cannot stop change, but you can decide how to meet it. You cannot erase cause and effect, but you can influence which causes you set in motion and how you respond to the effects you inherit. Think of life as a vast garden. Every thought, word, and action is a seed planted in that soil. Some seeds will grow quickly, others will take time, and some will surprise you by sprouting when you had almost forgotten about them. You cannot control every element of the garden. The weather will change, pests may arrive, seasons will shift, but you can decide which seeds to plant and how to care for them. That is the essence of freedom. That is the essence of responsibility. Now let us pause here and consider how these principles play out in ordinary life. Imagine waking up on a morning when nothing seems to go your way. The alarm clock fails, traffic is heavy, your mood is sour, and every interaction feels sharp or frustrating. Most of us react by blaming the circumstances. We curse the traffic, resent the alarm, or feel unlucky. But when we look through the lens of impermanence, karma, and choice, the picture changes. Impermanence tells us that this day, like all days, will shift. The mood you feel now will not last forever. Karma reminds us that your responses to these frustrations are planting seeds. If you carry irritation into your conversations, you create ripples of tension that may return to you later. But choice empowers you to pause, to breathe, and to plant a different seed, perhaps one of patience or humor. The external conditions may not change immediately, but your inner relationship to them shifts, and that shift transforms the day. Consider another example, one that touches on relationships. Suppose you have been hurt by someone you trusted. The pain feels deep and unfair, and your mind cannot stop replaying the moment of betrayal. Impermanence reminds you that even this sharpness will soften with time. Karma suggests that both your choices and the other person's choices are part of a chain of causes and effects that extend far beyond what you can see. And choice invites you to decide how you will respond: with bitterness that plants more suffering, or with understanding that creates the possibility of healing. This does not mean excusing harm or pretending it never happened. It means choosing the kind of seed you wish to place in the soil of your own life. Western science and psychology echo these principles in surprising ways. Neuroscience shows us that our brains are constantly rewiring, creating new pathways depending on what we practice. Focus on anger, and those pathways grow stronger. Focus on compassion, and those pathways also grow. This is impermanence and karma at work in the nervous system, and choice determines which direction we cultivate. If you have ever learned a musical instrument, a new language, or even a simple skill like cooking, you have seen this process in action. At first it feels awkward, mistakes are constant, and progress seems slow. But with practice, repetition, and intentional choices, the skill develops. The awkwardness fades. What once felt impossible becomes natural. This is how life works in every dimension. Nothing is fixed. Everything changes, and every choice creates ripples that shape the future. Sometimes the consequences of our actions appear so slowly that we fail to recognize the connection. A person may live for years ignoring their health, making small choices that seem harmless in the moment until one day the weight of those choices ripens into illness. Another person may practice patience and kindness day after day, not seeing immediate results until one day they notice that the people around them treat them with deep respect and trust. The seeds we plant are always growing, whether or not we pay attention. At this point you may wonder if everything is impermanent, if every action creates karma, and if choice is always present. What does this mean for the larger questions of meaning and purpose? Does it imply that everything is simply mechanical? That life is nothing more than a machine of causes and effects? Not at all. The very fact that you can pause and reflect on these truths, that you can ask questions and decide how to respond, points to something profoundly human. Awareness itself becomes the key. Without awareness, we live automatically, repeating old patterns, planting seeds without noticing. With awareness, we step into the garden with open eyes, mindful of the seeds we sow. Impermanence, karma, and choice are not meant to frighten or burden you. They are meant to empower you. They reveal that while you cannot control everything, you are never powerless. You are a participant in the unfolding of life, not a victim of random chance. The story you are living is being written in every breath, in every word, in every action. And because everything changes, you can always begin again. To see this clearly is to recognize that no moment is wasted. Even your mistakes carry lessons. Even your pain can become a teacher. The world is not conspiring to break you. It is inviting you to grow. When you look back on the chapters of your own life, you may begin to notice how certain hardships became turning points, how certain losses opened new paths, how even moments of despair carried seeds that later blossomed into wisdom or strength. These are not accidents. They are the natural unfolding of impermanence, karma, and choice working together. And so, the next time you ask why something has happened, pause before you fall into despair or anger. Ask instead, what is changing here? What seeds are being planted? What choice can I make now that will shape the future more wisely? These questions do not erase the difficulty, but they transform how you stand in it. We began this journey with the question of fairness, with the confusion of why life sometimes feels unjust. Now we see that fairness is not about instant results, but about the deeper patterns of cause and effect. Impermanence ensures that no pain lasts forever. Karma ensures that actions matter. Choice ensures that you are never without influence. Together, these truths form the foundation for the teaching that everything happens for a reason. This is not the cold hand of fate, nor the cruelty of random chance. It is the living, breathing dance of conditions unfolding. When you begin to live with this awareness, life takes on a new texture. Even the smallest moment glows with meaning. The way you speak to a friend, the way you eat a meal, the way you breathe in, the quiet of the night, all of these become acts of planting seeds in the great garden of existence. And those seeds in their own time will bear fruit. As we move forward in this journey, remember this impermanence, karma, and choice are not ideas to memorize, but realities to live. They are not meant to be understood once and then forgotten, but to be practiced daily in the way you walk, the way you listen, the way you love. With each step, you are shaping the story of your life, and through that story, you are shaping the world. You have already seen how impermanence, karma, and choice shape every corner of your life. They are the foundation, but foundations are not the whole house. To truly understand why everything happens for a reason, we must step back and take in the wider view. It is like climbing higher on a mountain trail. At the bottom, the path feels confusing. Trees block your sight. Rocks force you to stumble. You wonder if you are lost. But as you ascend, the valley below comes into view. You see rivers joining forests, spreading roads and villages, forming patterns you could not see when you were surrounded by them. In the same way, life often feels unjust when we only see fragments. A breakup, a loss, an illness, or an unexpected challenge can seem senseless when viewed in isolation. But step back and the picture begins to change. What seemed random becomes part of a larger design. What felt like punishment becomes preparation. The shift is not about blind optimism or pretending that suffering is pleasant. It is about recognizing that events are linked, that your story is woven into a much larger tapestry of causes and conditions. This wider vision begins with connection. Look around you right now. The device in your hands was shaped by thousands of lives. Engineers designed circuits, miners pulled rare minerals from the earth, workers assembled parts, drivers transported shipments, retailers made the product available. Even the electricity powering your screen comes from networks of workers, machines, and natural resources. Nothing exists on its own. Everything depends on everything else. This truth can be overwhelming at first, but it is also deeply reassuring. You are not alone. Your life is not an isolated accident floating in a void. You are part of a web so vast that every choice you make touches others, and every action they take touches you. This is not mystical poetry. It is daily reality. Every meal you eat depends on farmers, weather, soil, and sun. Every breath you take depends on forests and oceans producing oxygen. The sweater you wear, the road you drive on, the words you hear, all of it arises from interconnected causes. When we understand this, our sense of fairness transforms. Fairness is not about every moment looking balanced from our narrow view. Fairness is about the larger unfolding where seeds sprout in their time and hidden connections slowly reveal themselves. Imagine planting a garden with both fast-growing herbs and slow-growing trees. If you judged the fairness of the soil after 1 week, you would be misled. The herbs would already be tall, and the trees would look like nothing but bare earth. But return after 10 years, and the picture changes. The herbs are gone while the trees rise tall and strong. The soil was never unfair. It simply required time for the deeper seeds to bear fruit. The same is true in human life. When someone prospers despite harmful actions, it is easy to think that life is unjust, but the pattern is larger than what we can see today. Some consequences sprout quickly like weeds, others take years like oak trees. Your task is not to track every detail, but to trust that the law of cause and effect is consistent. Nothing is wasted, nothing disappears. Consider history itself. Entire nations rise and fall according to causes and conditions. Economies expand when people cooperate and decline when greed outpaces wisdom. Movements for justice seem slow, but they are like rivers carving canyons. What begins as a single drop becomes a force that reshapes the land. Slavery once looked permanent in many societies, yet the seeds of resistance grew until chains broke. Women once had little voice, yet today they shape governments, economies, and families around the world. These transformations are not random. They are the result of seeds planted by countless lives over generations. The vision of connection also extends to nature. Forests do not exist in isolation. Rain cycles depend on trees, animals spread, seeds, rivers carry nutrients. Disturb one element and the whole system shifts. Human life is the same. A single act of kindness can ripple outward in ways you may never see. A single act of cruelty can do the same. Nothing is isolated. Everything is woven together. But connection alone is not enough. We must also speak of natural justice. Justice here does not mean courtroom trials or political debates. It means the deep sense that life has a balance, that what is planted will eventually sprout, and that no action vanishes into nothingness. This is not punishment or reward. It is alignment with reality. A farmer who plants corn does not reap wheat. A person who plants anger does not harvest peace. This justice often looks delayed because of our limited perspective. A child may ask why they must study when they would rather play. They cannot see the long-term justice of education shaping opportunity. Adults are the same. We often want instant results, instant recognition, instant comfort. But life's fairness does not operate on our schedule. It operates on the schedule of cause and effect. This is why patience is such a powerful virtue in Buddhism. Patience is not passive suffering. Patience is trust in the law of causes and conditions. It is knowing that the fruit will ripen when the time is right. If you demand the fruit before its season, you will taste bitterness. If you wait, nurture, and trust, the sweetness arrives. Think about times in your own life when something felt unfair, only for the outcome to later reveal its purpose. Perhaps you lost a job and thought it was disaster, but that loss pushed you toward a new opportunity that became the most meaningful work of your life. Perhaps a relationship ended, leaving you heartbroken, only to clear space for a connection that honored you more deeply. At the time, the loss felt cruel. Later, the pattern became clear. That is natural justice at work. This does not mean that every tragedy is secretly good. It does not mean we should dismiss suffering with shallow optimism. Pain is real, loss is real, and injustice in human society requires action, not denial. But when we hold the wider view, we begin to see that even pain can serve as soil for growth, and even injustice can awaken courage that would not have risen otherwise. There is a story told in many traditions about a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbors came to him shaking their heads, saying, "What bad luck?" The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A few days later, the horse returned, bringing 3 wild horses with it. "What wonderful luck," the neighbors exclaimed. Again, the farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses, fell and broke his leg. "What terrible luck," said the neighbors. Again, the farmer said, "Maybe." Soon after, soldiers came to the village to draft young men into the army, but they spared the farmer's son because of his broken leg. Now the neighbors declared, "What good luck?" And the farmer, wise as ever, said, "Maybe." The point of this story is not to erase the difference between good and bad, but to show the limits of our vision. What looks unfair today may reveal itself differently tomorrow. What looks like blessing today may lead to challenge tomorrow. Justice unfolds across time, not in the instant of our judgment. This wider vision also invites compassion. When we see that life operates through causes and conditions, we stop blaming individuals as if they alone carry the weight of everything. A person born into poverty did not create all those conditions themselves. A person facing illness is not morally guilty of their pain. They are living within a web of causes, many beyond their control. Our role is not to judge, but to recognize our shared responsibility. If we are all connected, then natural justice calls us to act not only for ourselves, but for the collective. Consider the environment. The climate is changing because of choices made across generations. No single individual created it, but each of us contributes. The consequences will not fall equally, and that itself is part of the challenge. Yet the law of cause and effect remains. What we plant today in terms of energy consumption and awareness will ripple into the future. The justice here is not about guilt alone, but about responsibility. When we know we are connected, justice means taking wise actions that create better conditions for all. This perspective also changes how we see power and privilege. Those who enjoy comfort today are not inherently better or more deserving than those who suffer. They are experiencing the fruits of certain conditions, family, society, history, that allowed seeds to sprout. But conditions change, and with them fortunes change. This truth humbles the privileged and empowers the marginalized. No state of affairs is permanent. Everything is subject to the dance of causes and conditions. The wider vision also reshapes our understanding of meaning. Life is not a random accident, but neither is it a rigid script. It is a living system where every thread matters. Your struggles are not isolated punishments. They are threads woven into the design of growth. Your joys are not random gifts. They are ripened fruits of seeds once planted. The meaning comes not from control, but from participation. When you see yourself as part of the web, your choices gain weight, your struggles gain context, and your life gains purpose. There is a moment in meditation when this wider vision becomes more than an idea. You sit quietly watching the breath, noticing thoughts rising and falling. Suddenly you realize that even these thoughts are not isolated. They are born from memories, sensations, sounds, emotions, all feeding one another. In that instant, the truth of connection is no longer philosophy. It is experience. And with that experience comes relief. You are not a solitary burden carrying life on your back. You are a participant in an infinite dance, both giving and receiving, both shaping and being shaped. Natural justice does not promise that every moment will feel good, but it promises that nothing is wasted. Every tear waters the soil of growth. Every joy illuminates the path. Every choice, even small, contributes to the unfolding of the whole. To live with this awareness is to walk through life with greater trust, greater patience, and greater compassion. As we continue this journey together, remember the view from the mountain. From above you see patterns invisible below. From a wider vision you see connection where once you saw isolation, and you see justice where once you saw chaos. This is the invitation of Buddhist wisdom. It does not ask you to escape the world or deny your pain. It asks you to widen your gaze, to trust the flow of causes and conditions, and to participate with intention. Everything happens for a reason, not because some invisible hand manipulates your life, but because everything is connected, everything changes, and everything follows the natural law of cause and effect. When you hold this truth, fairness is no longer a desperate question. Fairness becomes the steady rhythm of a universe that is always teaching, always balancing, always guiding you toward deeper awareness. From the mountaintop, we have seen the wider vision. We understand that everything is connected, that nothing is wasted, and that natural justice unfolds through causes and conditions. But wisdom is not meant to remain only in the clouds of reflection. Wisdom must step into the mud of daily life, where real choices are made, where habits are shaped, and where suffering or peace grows. The question now becomes, how do we live these teachings in each action, in each breath, in each ordinary moment? The answer begins with mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of paying full attention to what is happening right now without judgment or distraction. It is the art of being present. Too often our lives slip by unnoticed. We eat meals without tasting them, we walk streets without seeing them, we speak without really listening, and we breathe without feeling the gift of air filling our lungs. Mindfulness interrupts this autopilot. It awakens us to the richness hidden in each moment and helps us notice the seeds we are planting with our thoughts, words, and actions. Imagine starting your day not with a rush of alarms, emails, and stress, but with a single mindful breath. As you open your eyes, you pause, feel the rhythm of your breathing, and acknowledge gratitude for waking to another day. That small moment plants a seed. It is a seed of awareness, of presence, of openness to what is about to unfold. From there, every action becomes an opportunity to practice. Take the act of eating. Most people consume food while distracted by screens, conversations, or thoughts about what comes next. Eating becomes automatic, a means to an end. But when you eat mindfully, everything changes. Look at the food before you. Consider the sunlight, the rain, the soil, the farmers, the truck drivers, the cooks, all of whom contributed to bringing this meal to your plate. In that moment, your plate becomes a mirror of the entire universe. Each bite is not just nourishment for the body, but also a reminder of connection. Eating mindfully plants seeds of gratitude, patience, and presence. Walking is another practice. Most of us walk to get somewhere, barely aware of the steps we take. But mindful walking transforms the simple act of moving into a meditation. As your foot touches the ground, you notice the support of the earth beneath you. As you lift the other foot, you feel balance, shifting muscles, adjusting breath flowing. Each step is both ordinary and extraordinary. It reminds you that walking is not just a way to arrive at a destination. Walking itself is life unfolding step by step. Now consider speech. Words are among the most powerful seeds we plant. A careless remark can wound for years, while a kind word can heal in seconds. Living with awareness means pausing before speaking and asking, is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Does it plant seeds of peace or seeds of conflict? This does not mean censoring yourself into silence, but rather speaking with clarity and compassion. When you live this way, your conversations become part of your practice, shaping the causes and conditions of harmony. Work is another field where practice takes root. Many people treat their jobs as separate from their inner life, as if spirituality is for weekends or evenings, not for the office or workshop. But the truth is that every task, no matter how ordinary, is a chance to live these teachings. When you work mindfully, you bring full attention to the task at hand. Whether you are writing an email, fixing a machine, serving a customer, or cleaning a room, your work becomes an act of presence. The quality of your attention ripples outward, influencing colleagues, clients, and even the atmosphere of the workplace. Conflict, too, becomes an arena for practice. It is easy to live mindfully when everything flows smoothly, but the true test comes when frustration arises. Someone cuts you off in traffic, a co-worker criticizes you, a family member misunderstands you. In those moments, habit pushes us toward anger or withdrawal. But the teachings remind us that every irritation is an opportunity. You can pause, breathe, and choose a response that plants seeds of understanding rather than hostility. Conflict becomes a chance to practice patience, compassion, and skillful communication. This daily practice extends even into leisure. Watching television, listening to music, scrolling through social media, these are not neutral activities. They are seeds being planted in the soil of the mind. Mindful living means asking, does this nourish my heart and mind? Does it bring clarity or confusion? Does it cultivate compassion or fear? Choosing wisely does not mean rejecting all entertainment, but approaching it with awareness. You become selective not out of judgment, but out of care for the seeds you are watering. The practice also enters the realm of relationships. Every interaction with others is a chance to embody the wider vision. In friendships, practice means being truly present, listening deeply, and offering kindness without hidden agendas. In families, it means responding with patience when tensions rise, remembering that each member is shaped by their own causes and conditions. In romantic partnerships, it means nurturing not only love but also respect, ensuring that words and actions support growth rather than clinging. In community life, it means contributing to the collective good, seeing your actions as threads woven into the larger fabric. Daily practice is not limited to moments of peace. It also means facing difficulty with awareness. Illness, loss, disappointment, these too are part of the path. Instead of asking why me practice, shifts the question to, what can I learn here? What qualities can I cultivate? What seeds can I plant even in this soil of pain? In this way, suffering is not wasted. It becomes a teacher, sharpening compassion, deepening patience, strengthening resilience. Meditation remains at the heart of daily practice. Formal sitting is not about escaping life, but about training the mind to see clearly. As you sit, you notice the breath, the body, the rising and falling of thoughts. You observe impermanence directly as each sensation, each idea, each emotion appears and disappears. This trains the mind to remain steady, balanced, and aware. Then, when challenges arise in daily life, you are less shaken, more capable of choosing wisely. But daily practice is not confined to a cushion. It flows into every corner of existence. Washing dishes, driving a car, folding laundry, waiting in line, all of these are opportunities to live awake rather than asleep. Washing dishes becomes an act of mindfulness when you feel the water, smell the soap, notice the rhythm of your hands. Driving becomes a meditation when you breathe with the movement of the car, stay present with the road, and treat other drivers with patience. Folding laundry becomes a practice of gratitude when you consider the people who wear those clothes and the comfort they bring. One of the most powerful daily practices is gratitude. Each day, pause to notice what is supporting your life, the breath in your lungs, the sun in the sky, the people who care for you, the food on your table. Gratitude shifts attention from what is missing to what is already here. It plants seeds of contentment, making you less desperate for constant consumption and more capable of generosity. Another practice is reflection. At the end of the day, take a few moments to review, not with harsh judgment, but with gentle awareness. Notice the choices you made. Which ones planted seeds of peace? Which ones planted seeds of tension? What can you adjust tomorrow? This reflection transforms mistakes into lessons and successes into encouragement. Over time, it builds wisdom, guiding your steps toward more skillful living. Living these teachings in daily life also means recognizing the collective impact of small actions. Recycling a bottle, turning off a light, offering a smile, donating a meal. All of these may seem small, but they ripple outward. When multiplied across communities, they change cultures. Just as harm spreads through countless small choices, healing also spreads through countless small acts. Daily practice is not about perfection, but about persistence. Each day, each choice, each step is part of the unfolding pattern. There will be days when you forget, when habits take over, when mindfulness slips. That too is part of the practice. The moment you notice you have drifted is itself a moment of awakening. You can always begin again. That is the gift of impermanence. No failure is final, and no mistake defines you forever. Each breath is a new opportunity to plant seeds of awareness, compassion, and wisdom. To live this way is to transform daily life into a path of awakening. You no longer separate the sacred from the ordinary. The sacred is found in the ordinary. The way you cook, the way you speak, the way you breathe, all of it becomes part of your practice. Life itself becomes the monastery, and every moment is a teacher. When we live this way, the phrase, "everything happens for a reason," gains depth. It is not only about seeing patterns in the past, but about participating skillfully in the present. It is about planting seeds, consciously tending them with care, and trusting that the fruits will ripen in their time. It is about recognizing that meaning is not something we wait to discover at the end of life, but something we create in each action here and now. This daily practice is not a burden. It is freedom. Freedom from living asleep. Freedom from being a victim of habits. Freedom from missing the richness of the moment. It is the freedom to live with clarity, with compassion, and with purpose. As we prepare to move forward into the next part of our journey, carry this truth with you. Wisdom is not hidden in faraway temples or lofty books. It is waiting in the way you breathe, the way you eat, the way you walk, the way you love. Practice is not separate from life. Practice is life itself. And when you live this way, every action becomes a thread in the tapestry of meaning. Every moment becomes part of the unfolding story, and every choice becomes a way of saying yes to the deeper rhythm of existence. We have explored how daily practice allows wisdom to enter every corner of life. Eating, walking, speaking, working, even waiting in line can become fields of mindfulness and seeds of compassion. Yet the true measure of practice is not only found in peaceful moments but in how we respond to suffering. For it is suffering that tests our understanding, suffering that challenges our patience, and suffering that asks us to live the truth rather than simply admire it. No one escapes pain. Illness, loss, disappointment, betrayal, failure, these experiences touch every human being. The question is never whether we will encounter suffering, but how we will meet it when it comes. Will we see suffering as an enemy to be avoided at all costs? Or will we recognize it as a teacher that can transform us if we dare to listen? To face suffering wisely, we must first accept its reality. Many people spend their lives running from pain, numbing themselves with distraction, consumption, or denial. Yet avoidance never erases suffering. It only buries it where it festers and grows. The first step is to acknowledge pain honestly. This hurts. This is difficult. This is not what I wanted. By naming suffering, we strip it of its disguise. We see it clearly, and that clarity itself begins the work of transformation. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering arises from causes and conditions just like everything else. It is not random punishment or meaningless cruelty. It is the natural outcome of impermanence and attachment. We suffer when we cling to what changes, when we demand permanence from what is fluid, when we resist the truth of reality. This does not mean suffering is our fault in a moral sense. It means suffering is a signal pointing us toward where we are clinging, where we are resisting, where we are misunderstanding. Imagine holding a rope tightly as it is pulled through your hands. The tighter you cling, the more your skin burns. Let go, and the rope still moves, but the pain eases. In the same way, suffering shows us where we are clinging. It asks us to release, not because release erases the situation, but because release frees us from unnecessary pain. But facing suffering is not only about letting go, it is also about leaning in with compassion. When you encounter pain, whether your own or someone else's, the natural reaction is to turn away. Compassion invites us to turn toward it instead, to sit with the sick, to listen to the grieving, to comfort the anxious, to offer the same to ourselves. Transformation begins when we stop treating suffering as an intruder and start welcoming it as part of the human journey. Consider grief. When someone you love dies, the loss feels unbearable. The mind wants to deny it, to push it away. Yet grief is love refusing to vanish. It is the proof that connection mattered. To grieve fully is to honor the depth of that love. Over time, grief reshapes itself. The sharp edges soften, and what remains is gratitude. Pain transforms into wisdom, teaching us to cherish what is fleeting and to hold others more tenderly. Or think of failure. You attempt something important and fall short. The sting of disappointment can feel like humiliation. Yet failure is often the soil in which resilience grows. It strips away illusions, humbles pride, and forces us to refine our efforts. Many of the world's most meaningful discoveries and achievements were born from failure. In this way, failure is not the opposite of success, but part of its foundation. Betrayal is another form of suffering that cuts deep. To be deceived by someone you trusted feels like a wound to the soul. Yet even betrayal can transform us. It teaches discernment, strengthens boundaries, and reminds us that trust must be placed wisely. More importantly, it pushes us to anchor our worth not in the shifting approval of others, but in the unshakable ground of self-respect. Suffering can also be collective. Wars, injustices, natural disasters, these impact entire communities. Facing such suffering requires more than individual resilience. It calls for solidarity, for shared action, for the recognition that transformation is not only personal but also communal. When a community grieves together, heals together, and works together, suffering becomes the seed of deeper unity. Transformation through suffering does not happen automatically. Pain alone does not guarantee growth. Some people become bitter, closed, and hardened by their wounds. What makes the difference is awareness. With awareness, suffering becomes a fire that forges wisdom. Without awareness, it becomes a fire that consumes. One of the most powerful practices in facing suffering is to shift the question, Instead of asking why me, ask what now. Instead of why did this happen, ask how can I respond. This shift moves you from victimhood to agency. It acknowledges that while you may not control the cause of suffering, you always control your relationship to it. Take the story of a young woman who lost her job during an economic downturn. At first, she fell into despair, convinced her life was ruined. But with time, she began to ask, what now? That question led her to skills she had ignored, opportunities she had never considered, and eventually to a career that aligned more deeply with her values. What felt like destruction became transformation. Another practice is reframing suffering as a teacher. When pain arises, ask, what is this trying to teach me? Sometimes the lesson is patience. Sometimes it is humility. Sometimes it is compassion. Sometimes it is the courage to act. By seeing suffering as a teacher, you transform it from an enemy into an ally. Meditation offers a direct way to work with suffering. Sitting quietly, you bring awareness to the sensations of pain, whether physical, emotional, or mental. Instead of resisting, you observe. You notice how the pain rises and falls, how it changes in texture, how it ebbs and flows. This observation reveals impermanence, even in suffering. No pain, however sharp, stays the same forever. In this awareness, space opens. You discover you are not the suffering itself, but the awareness holding it. That shift transforms the relationship entirely. Loving-kindness meditation deepens this transformation. You begin by sending compassion to yourself. May I be free from suffering. May I find peace. Then you extend it to others, even those who caused you pain. May they be free from suffering. May they find peace. At first, this may feel impossible, but over time it softens the heart. It breaks the chains of resentment and allows healing to flow. Facing suffering also teaches the importance of equanimity. Equanimity is the calm strength that allows us to meet both joy and pain with balance. It does not mean indifference. It means not being swept away. Life will bring highs and lows, but equanimity allows us to remain steady, to see both as passing waves rather than permanent states. With equanimity, suffering loses its power to control us, and joy loses its power to blind us. Transformation through suffering is often subtle. It may not announce itself with fireworks or sudden revelations. More often, it unfolds quietly, like a seed germinating beneath the soil. You look back months or years later and realize you have become stronger, wiser, more compassionate than before. The suffering you once thought would break you became the very ground that rebuilt you. Western culture often avoids speaking of suffering. There is pressure to appear successful, happy, in control. But denying suffering does not erase it. By hiding it, we deny ourselves the chance to grow. True strength is not the absence of suffering, but the courage to face it openly. True beauty is not perfection, but resilience. In this way, suffering becomes a sacred doorway. It opens us to humility, reminding us that we are not invincible. It opens us to compassion, reminding us that others suffer too. It opens us to meaning, reminding us that even pain can serve a purpose when embraced with awareness. Let us return to the image of the stone in a river. When a stone first falls into the water, it disrupts the flow, creating turbulence and noise. But as time passes, the stone settles. The river continues to flow around it, polishing its edges, softening its roughness, until it becomes part of the riverbed. So too with suffering. At first, it disrupts our lives, filling us with turmoil. But if we allow awareness to flow around it, suffering gradually shapes us, smoothing our edges, teaching us strength and becoming part of the foundation of who we are. The greatest transformation of suffering is the awakening of compassion. When you have walked through pain, you can meet the pain of others with understanding. You no longer offer shallow comfort or empty advice. You offer presence, empathy, and genuine care. In this way, your suffering becomes medicine not only for yourself but for the world. Everything happens for a reason does not mean every event is good or pleasant. It means every event carries potential for growth, meaning, and transformation. Suffering is not excluded from this truth. In fact, suffering is often the most powerful reason of all. It pushes us beyond complacency, awakens us to the fragility of life, and calls us to live with greater depth. As you continue on this journey, remember, do not fear suffering and do not worship it. Meet it with awareness, accept it as part of life, and allow it to transform you. In doing so, you discover resilience. You never knew you had wisdom. You never thought you could gain and compassion that connects you to the whole of humanity. This is the promise of transformation. Not that life will spare you from pain, but that pain can be the path to awakening. Not that suffering will vanish, but that suffering can reveal the strength, clarity, and love already within you. In the last part of our journey, we faced suffering and discovered how it can become a doorway to transformation. We saw how pain, when met with awareness, can polish the rough edges of our lives and awaken compassion. Yet to fully grasp why everything happens for a reason, we must look deeper into the very structure of existence. We must examine how life arises moment by moment, not in isolation, but through an intricate web of conditions. This teaching is known as dependent origination, and it reveals the truth of the interconnected self. Dependent origination can sound abstract at first, but it is as concrete as the ground you walk on. It means that nothing exists by itself. Every phenomenon, every event, every thought, every breath arises because of causes and conditions. When those conditions change, the phenomenon changes or disappears. This principle applies not only to mountains and rivers, but also to your mind, your identity, your relationships, and even your sense of who you are. Let us begin with something simple. Consider a tree. At first glance, a tree seems to be an independent object, standing tall and solid. But look closer. That tree depends on countless conditions: the seed that carried its genetic blueprint, the soil that nourishes its roots, the sunlight that fuels photosynthesis, the rain that quenches its thirst, the wind that spreads its pollen, the insects that pollinate its flowers. Even the air you exhale provides carbon dioxide that the tree transforms into life. The tree does not exist on its own. It is a vast network of conditions woven together into the shape we call tree. Now turn that same lens toward yourself. You may think of yourself as a fixed, independent being, but you are also a network of conditions. Your body depends on food grown by farmers, water drawn from rivers, oxygen produced by forests. Your thoughts depend on language taught by parents and teachers, on culture passed down through generations, on experiences shared with others. Even your emotions depend on the presence of other people, the stories you tell yourself, the hormones flowing through your blood. There is no self that exists apart from these conditions. The self is not an isolated object. It is a process, a river of influences flowing together. This understanding can be unsettling at first. We often cling to the idea of a solid, permanent self. We want to believe there is a core identity that stands unchanged through time. But when we look honestly, we see that who we are changes moment by moment. The child you once were is gone, yet not entirely. The teenager you became has vanished, yet not completely. The adult you are today is also changing cell by cell, thought by thought, relationship by relationship. Just as a flame exists only because fuel, oxygen, and spark come together, the self exists only because conditions come together. Remove the conditions and the flame disappears. Far from diminishing us, this realization expands us. It shows that we are not trapped inside the walls of our skin. We are woven into the entire cosmos. When you breathe, you take in air that has passed through the lungs of birds, trees, and ancestors. When you speak, you use words shaped by centuries of human culture. When you love, you connect with a force as old as life itself. To see yourself as interconnected is to see yourself as vast as belonging to the whole. Dependent origination also explains why nothing happens in isolation. A choice you make today ripples outward, influencing not only your own future but the futures of others. A kind word spoken to a child may echo decades later in the way that child treats their own family. A harmful action taken in haste may ripple outward into pain you never intended. This is why everything happens for a reason, because everything arises from causes, and those causes ripple through the web of existence. Think of human society as a great net, each person a knot connected to others by threads. When one knot is pulled, the entire net trembles. When one knot is strengthened, the entire net becomes more resilient. This is not just a metaphor. It is the truth of how economies, cultures, families, and communities operate. What affects one affects all. Dependent origination reminds us that personal responsibility is never merely personal, it is collective. This teaching also transforms how we see identity. In the modern world, identity is often treated as fixed labels: nationality, profession, gender, politics. These labels give structure, but they also trap us. Dependent origination shows that identity is fluid, conditional, and evolving. Who you are depends on where you are, who you are with what conditions surround you. This does not mean you have no identity. It means your identity is alive, shifting like a river capable of change. This recognition frees you from being imprisoned by past stories. You are not permanently the mistakes you made, nor the roles assigned to you. You are a living process, and new conditions can create a new you. One of the most powerful implications of dependent origination is compassion. When you see that others like you are products of countless conditions, judgment softens. The person who angers you is not simply a villain. They are shaped by family trauma, culture, circumstances. This does not excuse harm, but it explains it. And explanation opens the door to compassion. Instead of seeing enemies, you see fellow travelers caught in webs of conditions. Instead of asking, how can I punish them, you begin to ask what conditions must change so that suffering decreases. This shift also applies inward. When you suffer, it is easy to blame yourself, to believe you are flawed or unworthy. But dependent origination shows that your suffering is not a personal defect. It arises from conditions. Some conditions you created, others you inherited, and many you cannot control. Self-blame melts into self-compassion. You begin to treat yourself not as a failure, but as a human being navigating a complex web of causes. That compassion becomes the soil for healing. Let us return to the idea of natural justice introduced earlier. Dependent origination deepens it. Justice is not a cosmic judge handing out rewards and punishments. Justice is the unfolding of conditions. When good seeds are planted, good fruits arise if conditions allow. When harmful seeds are planted, suffering arises if conditions allow. It may not happen immediately because the web is vast, but nothing is lost. This is why patience matters. This is why awareness matters. This is why your choices matter. Modern science supports this vision in remarkable ways. Ecology shows how species are interconnected in ecosystems. Physics reveals how particles influence one another across distances. Neuroscience shows how neurons fire in patterns shaped by experience and environment. Psychology shows how behavior is conditioned by family, society, and culture. Each field confirms what dependent origination has taught for millennia: nothing exists alone. One of the most striking images used to describe this teaching is Indra's net. Imagine an infinite web stretching across the cosmos. At each intersection is a jewel, and each jewel reflects all the others. Change one jewel, and the reflections shift in all. This image captures the truth of interconnection. You are one jewel, reflecting and reflected by all. Your actions are never just yours. They shine into the whole. What does this mean for daily life? It means that your smallest actions matter. Choosing patience in traffic ripples into the way you greet your family. Choosing kindness in a conversation ripples into the way someone treats their co-worker. Choosing mindfulness in eating ripples into your health, which ripples into your energy, which ripples into your contributions to society. No action is isolated. Every moment is a thread in the net. It also means that healing must be collective. When we address suffering, we cannot stop at the individual. We must examine the conditions. Poverty, injustice, inequality, discrimination, these are not the fault of single people. They are the result of webs of conditions. Real transformation requires changing those conditions. Dependent origination calls us to responsibility not only for ourselves, but for the systems we create and sustain. When we embrace this truth, a new kind of self emerges. Not the isolated self that must defend itself at all costs, but the interconnected self that knows its well-being is bound to the well-being of others. The interconnected self no longer asks, what do I get, but what do we need? It no longer seeks power over others, but harmony with others. It no longer fears change, because change is the nature of self itself. This perspective does not erase individuality. You still have your own thoughts, choices, and experiences. But you see individuality differently. It is like a wave in the ocean. A wave has shape, motion, and uniqueness, but it is not separate from the ocean. Without the ocean, there is no wave. Without the wave, the ocean is incomplete. To see yourself as both wave and ocean is to see yourself as both unique and interconnected. Facing suffering through this lens becomes profoundly different. Instead of asking why me, you begin to see suffering as part of the shared human condition. Others grieve, others fail, others hurt. Your pain connects you to humanity rather than isolates you. This realization transforms loneliness into solidarity. It reminds you that healing is not a solo project but a shared journey. Dependent origination also changes how we view time. We often think in straight lines past, present, future. But dependent origination shows time as a web where past causes flow into the present and present choices ripple into the future. You are both the result of what has come before and the seed of what is yet to come. This view gives hope. No matter how heavy the past, new choices can plant new seeds. No matter how difficult the present, new conditions can create new futures. In the end, dependent origination is not just a philosophy. It is a way of seeing, a way of living. It invites you to let go of isolation and step into interconnection. It invites you to stop clinging to a fixed self and embrace the fluid, dynamic process of becoming. It invites you to treat every action, every word, every thought as part of a larger web shaping not only your life but the life of the world. Everything happens for a reason because everything happens through conditions. Nothing arises alone. Nothing disappears without trace. The self you cling to is not separate from the universe, but woven into it. And when you see this clearly, life becomes less frightening and more sacred. Each moment is no longer random chaos. Each moment is a reflection of the infinite net, a chance to live awake, a chance to plant,